Happy New Year, and thanks for tuning in to Excellent Living with Cheryl Martin. I'm Doris McMillan. We all start the year with great expectations, full of hopes and dreams because we've never seen this year before. So we make resolutions and lists of goals with a determined effort to stick to them this time. It always helps when we get some encouragement along the way to do better and to be better. We're pleased today to bring you part one of Cheryl's talk from a year ago at Excellent Living's Jumpstart 2014 rally. Cheryl said to the ladies, "Let's soar," and told them how, a talk that's relevant for any year. If you can't stay tuned for the entire broadcast, you can order your own CD of this motivating teaching by going to excellentliving.org. That's excellentliving.org. Now, here's Cheryl.
What I love most, I think, about a new year is the opportunity to begin again. I love that. To start over. You get a new book with blank pages. When the new year begins, we can all strive to be better than we were the year before in every area of life because we never arrive. There's always room for improvement. That's why this year's Jumpstart theme really resonates with me. Let's soar. I love that. I even love what it sounds like. Soar. To rise or aspire to a more exalted level. To rise or aspire to a more exalted level. Now, I'm sure if I were to ask you without hesitation, you could tell me very quickly the areas in which you want to soar in 2014. Maybe it's losing weight and keeping it off, getting to work ahead of time, being more organized, saving more money, sticking to that fitness routine. Maybe it's having a consistent quiet time, or not letting anger get the best of you. I want to share 5 principles for soaring to accomplish the purpose, the destiny for which you were created. So to soar, it's important to remember prepared for you is number 1, an exquisite and unique path. An exquisite and unique path. When I discovered this principle, resting in this fact has unclogged my mind and has given me such peace and clarity. An exquisite and unique path. Think of the different paths over the course of your life that you've traveled to get to a particular destination. Some were short, others were long. Some were straight, steep, full of curves. But if you stayed on the path, either following your GPS or following directions, you got to where you were going. Well, I'm here to share with you this morning that God has a specific path, a road that is tailor-made for you to travel. Your road will get you where He wants you to go. Now, your path is not going to look like your sister's, your husband's, your best friend. It's for you. It's uniquely for you. It is exquisitely for you. I began to focus on this when this fall I read a passage from author Sarah Young. And she writes as if Jesus is calling, and he says, "Do not be afraid to be different from other people. The path I have called you to travel is exquisitely right for you. The more closely you follow my leading, the more fully I can develop your gifts." I will not forget the day I read this, because when I read the passage, when I read this, the word path leaped out at me. And it's like I had never seen it before. It's like the Lord just totally illuminated my mind on this one word, path. In a powerful way, it's like it unclogged my mind. So now every time I see the word path in Scripture, I gravitate to it. For example, Psalm 5:8 in the New Living Translation, David prays, "Lead me in the right path, O Lord." Psalm 23:3, He guides me along right paths. Psalm 25:4 says, he's praying, "Show me the path where I should walk, O Lord. Point out the right road for me to follow." Individual. In a few verses later, David adds, "Who are those who fear the Lord? He will show them the path they should choose." I especially love this one, Psalm 32:8. The Lord Himself says, you want to memorize this one, "I will guide you along the best pathway for your life. I will advise and watch over you." Please let that sink in this morning. The God of the universe, the one who created you, says, "I will guide you individually." You can put your name there, along the best pathway for you. Personally. What a wonderful promise. Not I may, I will. So that means that the wisest thing for each of us to do in 2014 is to only take His best path and stay on it. The same day I read this scripture, I was visiting a friend. Her husband is a minister, and in the midst of the conversation, he said this. He didn't know I'd read those verses this morning, so I knew God wanted me to get this message, and I couldn't wait to share it with you today. He said, "Cheryl, everything you need in life to accomplish God's purposes for you is on this path." Now that's deep if I say so myself. Think about that. How many of us are scurrying around trying to figure out what to do, trying to make things happen? But if we stay on the path that God has uniquely designed for us, that's all we have to do every day of our lives. If we stay on that path, everything that God has ordered for us is on that path. Joy, wisdom, career opportunities, fulfillment, your ideal mate, if that's God's will for you. Everything is on that path. It's like following the yellow brick road. If you stay on the road, you will make it to your destiny. But see, here's the challenge. Our number one adversary, Satan, knows this, that if you stay focused on your path, you will reach the destination for which God has created you. So since he knows that, he comes up with all of these distractions to keep us off the right path, the one prepared by God. He wants us on the wrong path, one directed by him. So what are some of those distraction tactics? What are some of them? One is comparison. Susan bought a new car this year. Maybe it's time for me to get a new one. My car is older than hers. You know, Linda tried online dating. Maybe that's what I should do. She found a great guy and got married. You know, Mary switched careers and now she's bringing in big bucks. Maybe I need to switch my career. Think about the comparison distraction this way. Let's say we're both driving on the freeway. I get off at my exit to go home. You see me getting off at that exit and you get off too. How ludicrous is that? My exit will not get you home. You live in another county. But let's be honest, ladies, how many times do we do that? God called her to be a stay-at-home mom. You know you didn't like college when you were in college. And you decide you need to homeschool your kids. All because she's doing it. You know you don't have that discipline. Comparison. Rather than going to God and praying as David, Lord, I need you to lead me to the right path for me. Why would I want to be on any other path? Because someone else, that's her path. That's her lane. That's the way she gets home. My house is over here. Not in her direction. I can see her get off and say, great. But you know what? That's not my exit. She got married at age 23, but that's not my time frame. So why am I going to be frustrated when I need to be on this path? When my path says 33. But if I look over, God, why isn't it happening for me? Why isn't my husband like her husband? Different path. It's exquisite and it's unique for you. I've done this. I have been guilty of this. I see someone else try something. I decide to try it and God says, I didn't tell you to do that. That's why it didn't work. And see, we get frustrated. But it worked for them, but unique path. Another distraction, expectations. We expected to be married by now. Now we're mad. We expected that we would have children by now, to be further along in our careers by now, to own a home by now. We didn't expect life to be so difficult. Expectations. The problem was we've been placing our hopes in our expectations for our lives rather than in God's promises to us when we follow His exquisite path. My life has not turned out in any way like I expected. In some ways, it's been more wonderful. In other ways, I would not have signed up for the challenge, for the disappointment. Psalm 62:5 says, my soul waits only upon God, for my expectation is from Him. A.R. Bernard says, if you manage your expectations, you can manage your disappointments. If you manage your expectations, you can manage your disappointments. Most of the time, when I'm disappointed, it's because someone did not do what I expected them to do, or something did not turn out the way I expected. But you see, when we choose to focus on God's exquisite path for us, the focus is not our expectations, our dreams, but God's promises. You see, it's okay to expect God to keep His promises because He always does. That's what Abraham did. He knew that it was impossible for God to lie. You see, if God has told you, because you've been spending time with Him and you know His voice, and if He has said, if you stay on this path, this is a door I'm going to open, you can take that to the bank. If you're on His path. What does it say in Romans 4:17 through 21? It says, against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations, just as it had been said to him, so shall your offspring be. Without weakening in his faith, he placed the fact that his body was as good as dead since he was about 100 years old, and that Sarah's womb was also dead. Yet, he did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God. Why? Being fully persuaded that what God promised, He would do. Remember, Abraham was the only one who had that unique path. You don't see it duplicated in the Bible. God is not into duplication. FedEx Kinko's is. So if you're looking at your sister's life, you're looking at your friend's life, and hoping God's going to operate that way in your life, we should be encouraged by what God does in other people's lives, because He's our Father, but we don't want to lock Him in a box. Abraham heard the voice of God. God said, Abraham, this is my path for you. Leave your family and start walking, and I'll tell you which way to go. His unique path. And what I'm saying this morning, if each one of us, if I didn't go any further in my talk, if you just remembered one thing and embrace in 2014, I'm going to be tuned to the ear of God to make sure I'm tapping into His path for me. Period. We will be ahead of the game. Many times, even though God gave Abraham a preview of coming attractions, I have found a lot of times God guides us one step at a time, one day at a time, 1 month at a time. You know what? It's similar to when we're driving. I don't care if we have 300 miles to go. We will only see as far as a few feet. But if we keep driving, making those incremental steps, we will get to our determined destination. And so you may say, well, Cheryl, I don't know what God's path is for me. Here's the answer, Proverbs 3:5-7, and most of us know this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him. And there's a word. He will direct your path. Take the time to ask. Take the time to ask Him. Sometimes we can see life better as we look backwards. And all I have to do is think about when I was growing up in the inner city of Houston. When I look now, I can clearly see God's path when He placed within my heart the desire to be a broadcaster, to be a communicator. Now here I am. My parents didn't go to college. I don't know important people, but I know God. See, this is why God is committed. So we can't use excuses this morning. Can't use gender, can't use race, can't use your economic, can't use any of those things. Because God knew your path before you were created in your mother's womb. That's why connect with His path. I have a problem, honestly, when people tell you, conceive what it is you want to do. Focus on what you want God to do for you. I've gotten to the point I'm more concerned about, God, what do you want to do for me? I switch it. Because I can waste a lot of time because this is what I want, as opposed to he has the path. And when I look at my life, I can chart. And a lot of times when God is opening doors, it's really in the ordinary opportunities of life. It's no big thing. It's really just as a result of you walking or washing dishes. Just like the day when I was a teenager, my mother and I are listening to the Christian radio station. And she said, why don't you call that station? Maybe you can get a part-time or internship there. So I call. The person who picks up the phone and I say, I'm Cheryl Martin, I'm interested in majoring in broadcasting when I get to college, was wondering if you had any opportunities. And he said, no, not unless we think you are talented. And then I paused, and he paused. He said, are you coming in? I was talking to the general manager. That was a God-ordained path. It wasn't just coincidental that my mother and I are working in the kitchen. And why don't you call that station? Do you see how God is really orchestrating? Then he became my first mentor. He gave me a part-time job on Saturdays for 4 hours to read the news at the top of the hour. And I'm spinning records. And then he was the one who told me about Northwestern, had not heard of the school. God is so intimately involved in our lives. That's why Satan wants to get us distracted with our agenda, not taking the time to really know the voice of God so we can stay on that path. That's why we look back and we've wasted so much time, because half the stuff we're pursuing, he didn't tell us to do it. Most of the men we're pursuing, he's not in it. I hate the time I've wasted in relationships. He loves to distract us. But if I look at my life from that point all the way, it was God just calmly and quietly, as a course of me living, leading me to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. It's not because I'm all that. See, this is what we need to understand. It's because God is all that. And if he has determined what you are to do and be, when you are connected with him, you will watch him do amazing things, because you're waking up every day. Lord, your path. Your path for my children. Your path for my marriage. I'm constantly saying, Lord, how do you want to be glorified in my life? See, the reason why I'm saying that, I have a strong will. And if you ask me how I want him to be glorified, I'll tell you. But what I'm trying to do is empty me of Cheryl every day, which is a battle, to get that out of the way and say, you know what, Lord, as a practice, how do you want to be glorified in my life? So, remember, there's an exquisite and unique path for you. Stay on it. And purpose in your heart, I'm not getting off of it. But it's also important, if you're going to soar, to number 2, embrace your design. Embrace how God made you. Embrace your design, your strengths as well as your limitations. Your limitations are not going to hinder your calling. We spend so much time looking at what's wrong with us. Our age, our weight, our circumstances, our skill set. It's okay to acknowledge what your strengths are and your limitations. They are not going to hinder your calling. God has wired you how you are for your purposes. It's important to walk confidently in that direction. It doesn't mean if there's something we can correct, if there's something we can improve upon, we do that. But embrace how God has made you. There's a tragic parable that Ted Engstrom tells in his book, The Pursuit of Excellence. It's about an eagle that never learned it was made to fly. All his life, this eagle thought he was a prairie chicken. So he did what prairie chickens did. He scratched in the dirt for seeds and insects to eat. He clucked and cackled. And he flew in a brief thrashing of wings and flurry of feathers, no more than a feet off the ground. After all, that's how prairie chickens were supposed to fly. Years passed. The eagle grew very old. One day he saw this magnificent bird far above him in the cloudless sky, hanging with a graceful majesty on the powerful wind currents. It soared with scarcely a beat of its strong golden wings. "What a beautiful bird," said the eagle to his neighbor. "What is it?" "That's an eagle, the chief of the birds," the neighbor clucked. "But don't give it a second thought. You could never be like him." So the eagle never gave it another thought. And he died thinking he was a prairie chicken. God had created the eagle to be a magnificent bird and to fly. But he never embraced his design. He never knew his purpose.
We'll have to stop here for today. That was Cheryl Martin with the first part of a presentation given at Excellent Living's Jumpstart 2014 God's Way Rally. If you would like your own copy of this teaching, visit excellentliving.org. That's excellentliving.org, and select the CD entitled Let's Soar. If you desire an encouraging word to help start 2015 off right with prayer, we have volunteers who love taking your prayer requests to God. Just send your email to prayer@excellentliving.org. Coming up next time on Excellent Living, Cheryl Martin wraps up her presentation, Let's Soar.